Hello everybody, welcome back to Read and Reread. I am Angelia, hiding out in my guest room again to escape from the super loud air conditioner unit. And it is Tag Tuesday, hip hip hooray. And today I'm doing the Booktuber Name Tag. This is a tag that was created by Aaron Read a Book, or Aaron Read a Book. I was tagged about a month ago by Pat of Book Chat with Pat, and then again more recently by Alan at Big Hard Books and Classics, and all of those channels will be in the links for you to explore in the description box. And also, this is a tag that is constructed, the prompts are constructed out of the names of BookTube channels. So all of those also will be embedded in the prompts for you to enjoy and explore after the video. Or right in the middle of the video. If you get bored of this video, you can go try another channel. There'll just be a whole buffet of them down below. I woke up with a really stiff neck, so if I'm in weird postures, we're gonna blame it on that and not just the fact that I have bad posture. But let us begin. The first prompt is books I'm not reading. A book that's been on your TBR forever. Okay, and I am sitting in the squeaky chair again. So if you hear an ominous sound, it's the chair, okay? It's the chair. Just saying. All right, so a book that's been on my TBR forever. I pulled two. I pulled one that really has been on it forever, and then another one that's been one of those recent lurkers where you had to run out and buy it and then you still haven't gotten to it. So my recent lurker is A Little Luck by Claudia Piniero. I read Elena Knows last year, loved it. When I saw this at the bookstore, and it was in that same translated fiction section that I talked about in my last video at Book People, I was so excited I grabbed it. And I keep looking at it and thinking, oh, this month I really have to read this. And then somehow other things happen and I still haven't read it. Now she has another new book coming out and I still haven't read it. So this is my recent TBR shamer, and then a long-term one, decades in the making. And I've talked about this one before, because this question comes up in a lot of tags about something that you've had forever and you still haven't read it. Armadale by Wilkie Collins. Let's circle back for a second. A Little Luck. Listen to the description. Both of these books sound fantastic. 20 years after a shocking accident, Mary Lohan returns to the Buenos Aires suburb she escaped in a fugue of guilt and isolation. She's not the same, not her name or voice or even the color of her eyes. The neighborhood looks different too, but she's still the same woman and it's still the same place, and the past erupts into view and they slowly collide. Okay, I love a story about somebody going back and all the crap just coming back up. I like those kind of stories. Why haven't I read it yet? Listen to this one. Armadale is an ingeniously plotted tale of mystery and intrigue. Okay, this was in serial form and it took 2 years. People hung in with this story for 2 years, in 1864 to 1866. All right, tale of mystery and intrigue, centering on the terrible destiny of two characters who are both named Alan Armadale. Though warned by his father of the consequences attendant upon any friendship with his namesake, Alan Armadale, calling himself, okay, I love this. This right here should have made me read this book years and years ago. Ozias Midwinter gains the confidence and affection of the man whom fate has determined should inherit the Armadale estates. Both fall victim to the beautiful, evil Lydia Gwilt, and the suspenseful story moves surely and inexorably to its chilling conclusion. What is my problem? So these, I need to read them. All right, number 2, from Novel Idea, a book with an interesting premise or plot device. Okay, for that one, I've also chosen a book that I have not yet read, although it's not a long-term shamer. I just bought it recently, and it is The Night Alphabet by Joelle Taylor. Stephen just read this and he really liked it. So the interesting premise or plot device is that this book takes place in the future. It's 2233 in the UK. There's a woman named Jones and her body is covered in tattoos, and she wants to add a line that links it all together. And as the tattoo artists, I guess there's two of them, they start to work and she tells the stories about each tattoo. And the stories, or maybe the tattoos themselves, are like doorways into different times in the past and present and future. And she's sort of a time shifter and shape shifter. The summer upper here at the bottom is a deep investigation into human nature and violence against women. So that's an interesting premise, and I'm looking forward to reading it. Number 3, Revenant Reads. A book where someone has returned from the dead. I had to think about that one for a couple of minutes, and I chose Brat, Farrar by Josephine. This book was published in, 1950. It's the only book I've read by Tay, but I would like to try something else. And it is, so what happens in this book, it's not supernatural. Somebody doesn't rise up in that way from the dead. But here's the premise. There's a family, a very wealthy family in England. And back a number of years ago, one of the children in this family, I think he was a twin. I know he's a brother. There's another couple of brothers and sisters. He apparently committed suicide by jumping off a cliff. And so now years have passed, and another one of the brothers is about to come of age and kind of be in possessorship of this great fortune. And this family also, one of their lines of business is that they are very high-level horse trainers for races. And so anyway, into that scenario, a young man arrives into the area, and somebody they don't recognize him. They see him and they realize he is a dead ringer for this person who died years ago, like what he would look like if he grew up. And he looks like the people in this family. And this person has a particular angle that he presents, and kind of comes up with this scheme about this guy, Brat Farrar, impersonating Patrick, the dead guy, and kind of portraying it as he didn't die, he survived, and now he's back, and he's gonna claim his stake in the inheritance. And Brat is at first not interested. This sounds way too risky and bizarre, but when he hears about the horses, then he's in, because that is his love. He loves horses, he trains horses. So when he hears about maybe getting access to these magnificent horses, he decides to participate. It kind of reminds me of, if you ever watch the show Sneaky Pete, where somebody kind of steps in as a person that nobody has seen since he was a kid and insinuates himself into the family. So there are a number of different mysteries about what happened in the past and whether or not this scheme is going to pan out, and are people buying the story, and all. It was really quite intriguing. Number 4, Criminale. A book where a crime takes place. Oh, well, I've read about a million books where a crime takes place, and most of them were good. So that wasn't a case of I can't figure out a book. It was, well, which one do I want to talk about? So I decided to go with another one that I have not yet read, which is Devil in a Blue Dress by Walter Mosley. This was in a recent book haul, but that's the only time I have ever talked about it because I haven't read it yet. It takes place in 1948. I think it's kind of a noir type mystery, and it's the first book in the Easy Rawlins series. I was excited when I found this at Recycled Books in Denton, a nice used copy, because I've been meaning to try Walter Mosley for a long time, and I wanted to get this particular first book in the series, and I don't know why my library doesn't carry this. But so it's about Easy Rawlins is a black World War II veteran, just got fired from his job. He's drinking in a bar. He hasn't figured out what he's going to do next, and then a white man approaches him to offer him good money to look for a missing woman. It kind of reminds me of I know this is the classic, but I feel like I read a recent book that must have been patterned on this opening, because I read, what was it called? It had the word lavender in it. Oh no. Okay, it's a mystery. Takes place in San Francisco. Where does this one take place? Oh, this is in Los Angeles. The one I read, there is a man who got fired for being gay, and it's right after World War II, and he's in a bar, and he's he's feeling some suicidal feelings, and somebody approaches him, a woman approaches him, wanting to find out about the death of her wife. That was pretty good. And now I feel like that must have been, the opening of that book must have been an homage to the opening of this book. I digress, but you know, one book leads to another. So, okay. Walter Mosley. Number 4 is Book Time with Elvis, a book about time travel, or someone named Elvis. And this one's not particularly original. I've talked about this one a lot because I reread it last year, and that's Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel, about a time-traveling man named Gaspare Roberts. Loves this name. And he is time traveling. We get his story of how he got this job, and then what he's trying to find, which is an anomaly where there's sort of a thinning between the barriers of time, and things are bleeding through, where people are seeing and hearing things simultaneously in different points in time. It sounds kind of complicated, but it works when you're reading it, and it's very engaging. And there's a character in her who's an awful lot like Emily St. John Mandel on a book tour about her very popular book about a dystopian apocalyptic event, which is very much like Station 11. But there's several other strands. Now this technically is a standalone, but there are a lot of characters that come across from The Glass Hotel, which she wrote prior to this, but they're not exactly, it's kind of a almost a little bit of an alternate multiversey kind of thing, because they're in there, but the details are not exactly the same as what happened to them in the previous book. So it's sort of interesting. So my real recommendation is to read Station 11, Glass Hotel, Sea of Tranquility. They're not a series, but there are some unusual threads thematically and character-wise that weave in between them. Number 6, middle of the book March. Your favorite book that you read in March. Okay, I really tried to pick some books here for the most part that I haven't talked about recently, or I haven't talked about over and over again, or maybe not for a long time, but it's not my fault. This is the wording of the question. Your favorite book that you read in March. Well, guess what it was? Yes, it was James by Percival Everett, which is still riding at the top as my number 1 book of the year so far. And I know there's people who have read and loved this. I think there's maybe a few outliers who read it and felt it was overhyped. They need to go read it again. They missed something. They missed something in there. And if you are a holdout because you don't like to read books that are getting overhyped, I understand. But I hope that eventually, when the hubbub dies down, that you will also give James a chance, because it is absolutely stellar. Number 7 is Book Buzz, a book with a great friendship. Well, I'm going to bypass a few that I read recently with great friendships that I just talked about. I am going to talk about one book that I have mentioned this a number of times, but also something that I haven't talked about maybe for a few months. So the ongoing series, where is it? I'm going to have to cut out a lot of shuffling, because since I'm sitting in another room, I'm at this really teeny table. So I'm using my stack of books to elevate the Chromebook where the questions are. So I keep having to stop and dig something out of the pile and then remake the pile. So all that will be trimmed out for your viewing improvement. But all right, I have to talk about Tales of the City again, because at the heart of this book is a group of friends that live in an apartment building run by Mrs. Madrigal in San Francisco. And my favorite friendship here is the friendship between Michael and Marianne. The series opens with the friendship between Michael and Mona, but I'm just going to admit that Mona is not my favorite character in this series. And I know the most recent book that just came out is Mona of the Manor, and I'm kind of like a whole book of Mona. But yeah, I just feel like she's just kind of an unreliable friend, and everybody spends a lot of time wondering about Mona, and is Mona okay, and where is Mona, and she's just kind of not there. But I love the friendship between Michael and Marianne in this book, and I also love the friendship between Michael and Brian. There's kind of a Schitt's Creek vibe in there. I like it. That's a show where I love the characters in their pairings with different people. And the series is kind of like that too. It's more about the two people coming together and the conversations they have that are really at the heart of the whole thing. And then the book that I haven't talked about lately, but I talked about it a lot last year, was The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store by James McBride. And the friendship I want to highlight from this book is Dodo and Monkey Pants. I know that sounds funny if you haven't read the book, but if you have read the book, Dodo and Monkey Pants, and this is a friendship that is not a large part of the book page-wise, but it is everything. It is the heart of the whole thing. The themes, the emotions of this book, they're all encapsulated in the bond that forms between two boys at a hospital. And it's just everything. It's beautiful, it's heartbreaking, it's absolutely unforgettable. Dodo and Monkey Pants. Number 8 is Obscure Book Adventures. A book that you love that never gets talked about. Okay, this is another question that comes up a lot, and I always struggle because I feel like it's hard to find a book that stumps the booktubers. The best I could usually do is come up with something that's kind of rotated out of the conversations. But I looked around on my shelves and I found a book that I feel like it got a little bit overshadowed by some other things within its category, and including even by myself when it came out, and that is Stories from the Tenants Downstairs by Sadiq Fofana, which was published in 2022. And I confess that I talked about it, but maybe not enough, because I was blown away by Night of the Living Rez in the category of story collections. And I think that book prize and book world-wise, it got overshadowed by Jonathan Escoffery's book, If I Survive You. And that one, of course, made it onto the Booker list and won some other prizes as well. But this was really a solid book from that pool, that time period. And in general, I do like to sing out the praises of story collections because they just don't get as much love and attention as I think they deserve. And even on some prize lists, they're not even allowed to be in the running. Stories from the Tenants Downstairs is a collection of linked stories about the people who live in a certain high-rise in Harlem. And gentrification is encroaching on this apartment building. It's been a home and a haven. In some cases, generations of a family have lived in the same apartment, but now it's been bought out and it's being gradually renovated and turned into a more upscale residence. And so people are being forced out, priced out, squeezed into the unrenovated sections of the building, into smaller units with higher prices. And each story is the voice of different people in this building. People of all kinds of different ages, genders, what's going on in their lives, their struggles. There are threads that connect. People are different members of the same family or friends or referred to other events or people in the building. And it moves very quickly. If you read one story where you don't completely relate or get absorbed in that person, you're soon going to move to someone else. And there were several stories in here that really stuck with me. And so I think that it didn't really get enough attention, and I was part of the guilty party because I was so obsessed with Night of the Living Rez. But this also was a really good book. And if you do like short stories, linked short stories, which is one of my favorite things, I do highly recommend Stories from the Tenants Downstairs by Sadiq Fofana. And I think he was or is a teacher, public school teacher in New York City. So he knows of which he speaks. Number 9 is Savage Reads, a book with a monster or beast or human acting monstrous or beastly. All right, I'm bypassing. I think several people talked about Frankenstein, which of course is the first thing that comes to mind and maybe the best answer, but I decided to look around for something else. Moon of the Crusted Snow by Wabgishig Rice. There is a sequel to this book too called Moon of the Turning Leaves that I talked about more recently. But Moon of the Crusted Snow is an apocalyptic tale about a village of Indigenous people living in Canada, northern Ontario, harsh winter coming in, and one weekend the power goes out, and nobody is really that alarmed because this happens sometimes when there's a storm, but the power goes out, the grid goes down, internet, phone, everything goes out, and it never comes back. And as the days pass, they realize that something larger has happened in the world. And then it's a survival story about people who have chosen to preserve and continue to hone traditional skills, who know how to gather food and save food and conserve energy, and people who have fully embraced all the modern conveniences, and they are just at the mercy of the elements or the kindness of the people around them. And the outside world begins to encroach, and there is somebody from outside their world who arrives, who basically is a human monster. And then there's the general monstrous nature of how fast people fall into desperate, panicked, and feral behavior when their comforts are suddenly ripped away. So, Moon of the Crusted Snow, and it's pretty short, and it's a really intense and interesting take on the post-apocalyptic situation. One of my favorite situations. All right, so number 10 is a book. This is the last one. A book that fits your own channel name or the name of a channel that you love. This is where I have to boomerang back to Pat, Catcher in the Rye again. The book, for me, read and reread, the book I have reread the most times. I have to boomerang it back to Pat because she also pulls Catcher into every tag she can, and she beamed it out to me in her tag, and I'm beaming it back. And the other one I'm going to choose to go with Pat and the other person who tagged me, Alan, from Big Hard Books and Classics, is Ulysses, which is a big, hard book and classic that I am not reading, but they are. They're in a reading group tackling Ulysses right now, better than me. But I wish them all the best, and I hope they are loving their experience reading Ulysses. And I think Alan has read it multiple times, and I think Pat's rereading it too. Anyway, it's them, not me. I don't want to read Ulysses. Big hard book and classic for them. And I thank those book friends for tagging me. If you have not done this tag yet, please consider yourself tagged and check out all the channels that were mentioned in this tag. I'm running weeks behind every time on tag, so by the time I get to it, it has toured the world. And so if it hasn't hit you yet, it's hitting you now and you're tagged. Have a great day. I'll be back for Friday reads.